John told me I could use it, but if John can hear me, I'm good. Thanks. So my name is Jim Vashro, and I worked for many years for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and towards the end got into education and started doing things like ice fishing workshops. Particularly, I'm involved with a group called Becoming an Outdoors Woman, and I'll have an ice fishing workshop coming up in about a month here in the Flathead. Although it's 18 and older, and you folks may not quite make that grade, so yeah, sorry about that. But the primary thing, one, I cut my ice fishing teeth on Georgetown Lake. I was running creel surveys, and I got to talk to hundreds of anglers. And then on the weekends, I'd actually go out and fish. So I got to test out lots of things. And up here in the Flathead, ice fishing is a big deal. On a lot of these lakes, a third to a half of the fishing occurs during the winter because you can get out over the middle of the lake, and a lot of the species we have, like kokanee and perch, are really accessible to ice anglers. And the catch rate tends to be good. The fish are in prime condition for eating, and it's a good good escape from the winter blast and the cabin fever. So, but I think the primary question I get from the women is, one, am I going to freeze to death, or will I fall through the ice first and die that way? So, well, you have to think about both, but there are some things you can do that you can get away from all that. And in my 50-plus years of ice fishing, I haven't frozen to death or fallen through the ice yet. So hopefully we can give you some pointers. The primary thing is your best piece of equipment is right here. So be smart about it. And when you're thinking about going to some place, call a place like Snappy's. They talk to ice anglers all the time. Is the ice safe? And beyond that, they're going to tell you what's biting, time of day, the gear you can use. They give you a lot of tips to make your trip a lot more successful. And just talking to Anthony Nice, the fishing department, and a lot of the shallower lakes, like the perch lakes and some of the trout lakes, are frozen, but the kokanee lakes, which tend to be deeper, are not. Most of them are not safe yet. And in order for a lake to freeze, water's kind of weird where it's densest at 39, and obviously at 32 degrees it freezes. Well, as these big deep lakes, it takes them a long time to get enough heat out where they'll get a lid of ice on top of them to where it's safe. And shallow lakes, they're already there. The big ones like the Thompson lakes, a little bitter and actually are probably a couple months away. McGregor Lake and Whitefish Lake may never form safe ice. So check with the local folks. Leave a plan where you're going and leave notes, tell somebody. And if you decide to move your location, let somebody know. Because every year, search and rescue wastes a lot of time searching over here where the person said they were going to be, when in fact they're over here, and sometimes minutes and hours make a huge difference. So make a plan, let people know where you're going, and then follow your plan. Or let somebody know if you change your plan. The other thing is go with a partner. It's more fun to go out with a fishing buddy, and if one of you gets in trouble, you can help each other. But the thing is you're going on the ice, stay apart. Don't walk shoulder to shoulder, because if one of you goes through, if the other one's 10 feet away, chances are you won't go through and you'll be able to help your partner or vice versa. So those are just a few things. So what kind of ice is safe? And where did it go? Oh, shoot. I had a piece of foam and it apparently didn't make it in. So I'll just describe it. I can do it this way. So ice is not just ice. And a lot of times the first ice and the last ice, like right now is first ice, the lakes are just starting to freeze up, still lots of oxygen, the fish are feeling pretty frisky, it can be some of the best fishing. But the ice is a little shaky yet, may not be real thick, may be some thin spots. So first ice and last ice are some of the most dangerous. Last ice is some great weather. The ice starts to thin, you get some sunshine, the fish get more active. But blast ice tends to honeycomb from the bottom up, and so the surface may look good, but in fact it's not very sound, so you got to be a little careful there. Most of the time I hear about people falling through, it's because they pushed it a little bit on first ice or last ice. Last ice, when it gets to where you got to put a plank to get out to the ice, might be time to start thinking about some summer activities. First ice, when you got to be out there standing on 2x4s, that's probably not a real good idea too. Clear ice is the safest ice. It's really strong. It freezes when nothing else, the water's calm, and it's just black or clear ice. That is the strongest ice. Now, as ice goes through melt and thaw on the surface, you get snow, and snow actually pushes the ice down, and water will come up through cracks, and you'll get some slush. That will freeze eventually, and that will have some air bubbles in it, so it's kind of gray or slushy looking. But as long as it's frozen good, it's still pretty good. Not quite as good as clear ice, but it still can be good. Well, how much ice is good? And I have to say 2 inches is the bare minimum. And I've been out on 2 inches, and it was a little creepy. They really recommend for being out to walk around safely 4 inches, and that's because it may be 4 inches here, but maybe there's a weak spot. So you have to be careful about that. A good rule of thumb is if you take your hand and you put it on top of the ice, this is about 2 inches. That's the bare minimum. That's really not very safe. So if you put your hand down and the ice is right at the bottom of your thumb, that's probably the minimum you want to do. If you put your hand down on the ice like this, the ice goes to about here, that's 4 inches. That's pretty darn safe for walking around. And if it gets down to here, at the bottom of your fingers, for me that's 5 inches. At that point, you can probably start doing things like small ATVs. And then if you get to where the ice is all the way up to here, then you can go with a side-by-side, or in some places they drive vehicles on the ice. I don't really recommend it. Up here, because our ice is pretty questionable. East of the Divide, Canyon Ferry, Fort Peck, shoot, they drive all over the place. But I've also got some pictures of them retrieving vehicles through the ice, and that's not a, if you're going to do that, suggest your partner drive his truck. That's a better way to go rather than yours. So, be real careful about it. As I mentioned, as you're going out, stay apart. Stay on the beaten path for the most part. And I always tell people, follow somebody out that's bigger than you. A lot of people follow me out because I'm a big fat guy. And if I don't go through, you're probably not going to go through either, right? So if there's a big hole there in the ice with a hat floating on it, probably go around that. If you're going to go off to the side into where there's no tracks in the snow, sometimes better fishing spots over there, but test your way out. As you go out, drill holes and check every so often, stay apart, check every so often, and make sure the ice is still safe. One year, some friends and I went to Ashley Lake on President's Day, so it was around February 12th, something like that. We came in through the Forest Service property on the east end. And as we're walking out, I said, that's kind of odd, there's no footprints or ice holes. And the guy lived on the lake, and he said, oh, it was open water a week ago. And I went, whoa, everybody stop. I had a hand auger, it took 4 turns, and it went through. There was about that much ice. And we all spread out and got the heck off. Went to the west end, and there was good 6 inches ice. So just on Ashley Lake, it was different from one end to the other. So test your way out. Really important that you do that. So, as you're walking out, the next big thing I recommend is ice cleats. And I've had 2 friends last winter. I had a friend who was out on Lynch Lake. He was walking off the lake with a handful of gear. He said the next thing he knew, he was on the ice, broke his ankle. And he's still dealing with that broken ankle, and he really wishes he'd had cleats. Had another friend, she was walking off. Her feet went up, she went down hard, hit the back of her head, got a severe concussion, and it took her 2 years to get over the effects of that. This is cheap insurance. The minimum I recommend are these little guys. They're about $4 or $5. And these will go on in the instep of your foot, and these rubber bands go over the top and grip on. They're better than nothing. They cost about $5. I don't necessarily recommend them. I carry some for people who show up who don't have anything else. The problem I have is these are right on the instep of your boot. If you step down with your heel, there's nothing to grip and your heel can take off. The other thing is that these rubber straps coming over the top of your feet tend to cut off the circulation, and it can actually make your feet a little bit cold. For a few dollars more, you can get something that's way better. Here at Snappy's, these are $15 to $25, and they stretch front and back over your boots. Got lots of grippies like that, and you can go lots of different ways. Let's see. Jack Tracks are a real common brand that got these little coily things, and again, they slip over the bottom of your boot. If you're going to get these and you're going to ice fish, I recommend you go with a brand that has a nylon strap that goes over the top of your foot. And because what will happen is if you have some that are just stretched over it like this, as you're walking through crusty snow, that can peel them right off. And you get out there 100 yards, you go, gosh, I lost one of them, and finding it in the snow is a pretty hard thing to do. So if you get the kind that has the little cordura strap that goes over your instep, it's much more likely to stay on your foot. Costs about $5 more. It's worth it. So these work great. They're also pretty nice when you if you go into a store or shop or something, or your home, they won't chew up vinyl floors and that. Actually, we carry these in all of our cars because around town, in parking lots. My wife fell in the parking lot and broke her rib, which is really painful too. So keep these in your car. They work really well. You can upgrade quite a bit. You go to ones that are called stabilizers. A little bit heavier. These run about $50, but they give you a full grip on your entire foot. And then the ones I've gone to more and more are ones that look like this, and they actually have little cleats on the bottom, and boy, you can really zoom around on these things. So give you a really good grip. My most extreme ones are these, and again, these were a military surplus one. They got good crampons on the bottom, strap that goes over my instep. I wear these if I think I'm going to have to fight somebody for an ice fishing hole. You stomp on their foot with these, they'll usually take the fight right out of them. So, but something like this will save you a broken arm or a broken ankle or a concussion or something. You're worth it. It's cheap insurance. The next thing.
So, Jim,
Yes.
so isn't the ice around the shore generally thinner than in the center of the lake, and it's drilling a hole the only way to tell? And are the presence of ice shacks a reliable indicator of safe ice?
Good questions. In terms of ice around the shore, actually a lot of times it'll freeze from the shore out. Unless there's the main place you'd have problems is if there's spring action coming off the shore, then it'll be a little thinner on the shore. But generally I'll go out 10 feet and drill a hole, and if it's good there, then I'm feeling pretty good for going out a ways. The presence of ice shacks generally would be a good sign that it's firm enough that there's a lot of traffic and people are setting up there, and except for really late in the year when the ice starts going to pot. So,
Because I've seen shacks out on the chain already.
yeah, there are people that are way more willing to push it than I am anymore. So, but I would guess there are places on the chain that probably have 4 inches. It'd be safe, but just proceed with caution.
So it freezes from the shore out?
Pardon?
You said it freezes?
Yeah, generally because it just gets cold, and it'll put a pretty good lid. So generally, I would say the ice at the shore is going to be the same as the middle, except for the springtime when you get a lot of sunlight on the shore. The shore is kind of dark, and it'll put heat down, and you'll see the ice starting to pull away from the shore. But this time of year, I'd feel pretty safe about it. Yes?
How are we doing the waffle?
So it wasn't the raffle?
When are we going to do that?
Oh, and right at the end, you're gonna have to sit through the talk a little bit longer, but I won't talk too much longer. We'll see if we can get something. So you got your cleats on, getting out on the ice. The other thing I really recommend is ice picks. And you can get ice at times where it's just an ice skating rink. And here's a good experiment. Sometime when you're out there and it's an ice skating rink, lay down and try to pull yourself with your hands. And you can't get very far. I've heard of people that have fallen through that would actually rip their fingernails off. That's pretty ugly. Ice picks are a game changer. And so they come with a nice pick on the end like this, and it's a good grip. And you can try crawling on glazed ice. Take these guys and you can scoot all over the place. The other nice thing about them is you can wear them around your neck. And if you're handy, you can take like a 1-inch dowel or a broomstick even, and use about a 4 or 5 inch piece. Take about like an 8-penny galvanized nail and cut off about that much. Drill a hole in the end of the dowel, waterproof glue, stick it in. I like to leave about that much sticking out, not much more. Because if it gets too long, your weight, you may bend it, and it's not going to work as well. In fact, that's as long as I'd take it. If you make your own, drill a hole in the end, put like a 30-inch cord on it. And I have some, and I couldn't find them this morning, so I gotta find them. Wear them around your neck. If you fall through and you're in your sled, they're not going to do you any good. But you can take these guys, you can scoot around. The nice thing is these float, so if somebody falls in and they can't get out of the ice, you can skid them over to them, and they can use them and pull themselves out. Better if they can pull themselves out rather than you going to get them. So the saying is, if somebody goes through the ice, reach, throw, grow. So if somebody goes through the ice, get flat, push out an auger or a sled or something, let them grab it and pull it in. The other thing you can do is a throw rope. And if you do any kind of water activities, you might have a throw bag in your raft or whatever, and these will work great, but you can make one yourself for just a few bucks. Use polypropylene rope because it floats. And I've got 50 feet of poly rope on this. This is just an antifreeze jug. Fits in my ice sled really nicely. And I can take this, I can throw it to somebody. They can grab it for dear life. I put a loop on this end, and they can hook the loop in their arms like this, or maybe get it around their shoulders, and then I can pull them to safety. But I can only pull them to safety possibly if I've got my ice cleats on. So that's another place that the ice cleats are really handy. You can make this, I already have an antifreeze jug, it cost me $5 for the rope. You are worth it. So 50 bucks might save you or your friends. So make that kind of investment. Yes.
How about using the sheath knife to drag yourself out? It seems to work in the movies.
Bet anything will work that's going to give you a grip. Yeah. Just don't cut yourself. You tend to get a little energized if you go through the ice. You're really going, but it'll work. So absolutely, it'll work better than fingernails. So, if you do go through, carry a high volume whistle. I'm not going to blow this because it'll blow your eardrums out. If you fall through the ice and you're trying to attract attention, you're all by yourself, eventually your voice is going to get kind of hoarse and everything. You can pucker up and blow long after your voice is given out. And these are really high volume or high frequency, and so the sound carries a long way. Somebody's going to hear it. What's the signal for distress?
SOS.
SOS. How do you do that with this?
No.
Yeah. How do you blow it?
You put your mouth on it.
Yeah. Any particular pattern? Any kind of whistles? You're getting there. What does SOS sound like? What is the Morse code back here? 3 short blasts. Yeah, that's kind of a universal I'm in trouble signal, 3 short blasts. SOS is 3 short, 3 long, and 3 short. But we won't go that far. So 3 short blasts, and somebody hopefully will hear it and say, oh, somebody's got a problem, let's go find them and see if we can help them out. So again, another little thing that you can pack that's going to help you out quite a bit. And probably most of these. Let's see here, let me check. Oh, so if you fall through, then obviously where you fell through, it was okay up to that point. So what you want to try to do is get back to where you just got into the water. What will happen, one, as your clothes get wet, they aren't going to drag you to the bottom necessarily. And in fact, the clothing will kind of insulate you a little bit and keep you from getting quite so cold. One of the things that happens when people fall through is you gasp. That, both from the cold and just the shock of falling through. Well, if your head's underwater, when you do that, you got a problem because you've inhaled water. Give yourself a couple of minutes to kind of calm down and get collected before you start trying to rescue yourself. And there is absolutely no problem, if it's early in the year and you're a little worried about it, of wearing a life jacket. I wear life jackets when I think the ice is sketchy. Wear a life jacket. It does 2 things. One, if you fall in, it's going to keep you afloat. You don't have to worry about that, just getting out. And 2, actually, they're pretty warm. They block the wind and they tend to be warm. You can even go to the point where they make what are known as float coats and float pants. These will float. And they're not cheap, but you're worth it. So they're both warm, they cut the wind, and they float. You can just float around out there. And they've got them on sale right now for $160, which is a good deal. So it makes the clothing that will help you. If you've fallen in and you're trying to pull yourself out, your legs tend to float up under the ice. An easier way to get out is to roll over on your back and do a flutter kick and kind of work your shoulders up on the ice. So do a flutter kick, work your shoulders up. Hopefully you can work up far enough. Then you can roll over and crawl away from the hole until you get to where you think the ice is going to be safe again. And at that point, because you want to lay flat and spread your weight out, and at that point you can get up and go find a really warm place because it's going to be pretty chilly. So I think that's about it. Most of this is common sense. And if you're totally nervous about it, just wait for a couple of weeks for things to get better and go a little later, because no fish are worth dying or getting severely wounded. Any other questions? Any other tips that you folks that fish through the ice that you might want to share? I'm going to talk a little bit about keeping warm and comfortable and some of the other things. Some of the other things that people don't think about, particularly late in the season. Boy, fishing in April, ice can get a little sketchy, but it's a great time to be out there fishing. And but you get some really sunny days, sunblock, because it's just a really bad sunburn, and you end up going to school, you look like a little raccoon with red cheeks and all that. So, and then sunglasses. So I always carry sunglasses. A lot of sunlight in your eyes give you a headache, and later on it leads to other problems. But sunglasses and sunblock, take care of yourself when you're out doing that. And let's talk a little bit about just keeping warm, and then we'll turn you folks loose. So you can dress to stay warm. What is your closest contact with the ice usually? So feet, you bet. So get good snow boots, snow packs of some kind. Dress boots, don't cut it. Normal hikers, don't cut it. And so get something that's got some good insulation. Those might work. So the other thing I found, even those generally are not going to work to an extent that what's on direct contact with the ice, as you're standing there, you tend to squish down. And here's the thought. Air does not conduct heat very well. So air is a good insulator. That's why things like down is a good insulator because it's got lots of air pockets. Water really conducts heat very well. So you want to stay dry as possible. Don't get wet, because if you get wet, you're going to get cold. So a couple things you can do. If you got snow boots or whatever, you can add insoles on the bottom. And these ones are wool felt. You can trim them to fit your boot and make them fit. These make a huge difference in keeping your feet warm. Because if your feet get cold, the rest of you are not going to be happy pretty quick. These are $7. That's a bargain. And I was just talking to Jessie out there. They just lost their supplier. They've got a supply of them. And when those are gone, she doesn't know where they'll get the rest. So these will work really well. You can get a little fancier. These are space age ones, got some other insulating materials, or even sheepskin ones. Even these are $13. I mean, this is a really cheap investment to keep your feet dry and warm. If you have snow boots that are potentially are going to leak, remember I said if it leaks, then the liner is going to be wet and your feet are going to start getting cold, because that's going to start pulling heat away from your feet. If you think your boot may not be totally waterproof, what you can do, hopefully it has a removable liner. Take the liner out before you go out on the ice, and put the liner in this, put it on your foot, and then put all this back in the boot. And this will keep your liner dry, and it'll keep you way warmer. Just a simple plastic bag will keep your feet, your liner dry, and will keep your foot warm. And the other thing is, again, you're out on the ice all day, your feet sweat, maybe you pick up a little bit of water. At the end of the day, take those liners out and dry them. And they make good boot dryers if they're really wet. And two things, it'll keep them from getting mildewed. And two, if you go out the next day or the next time and they're dry, they're going to keep your feet a whole lot warmer. So the next thing, your head, and wear clothing that doesn't leave any gaps. Particularly, a lot of people have little short coats. When you sit down, it hikes up here. Well, what's right here? Your kidneys. And all the blood in your body is pumping through your kidneys. So if your lower back gets cold, you're going to start getting cold. You're going to feel it. So wear coats or bibs or whatever that keep you going. The other thing is your head. Your body wants your brain to stay warm, so you're thinking well. And things like a scarf, or this is a balaclava, fits over completely, shuts out all those nasty drafts that will go down there. And then this will really keep you a lot warmer. And another thing I use a lot is a hand muff. And when I'm out on the ice, I like to fish without gloves, by and large. I find it easier to handle ice rods and that. So you got this nifty little muff. You put your hands in there and keep it nice and warm. And I use a hand warmer in there. It's really nice. When I get a bite, I pull it out. It doesn't drop in the water. I can do the fish and whatever, and then I can put it back in here. These are really nice options. So, and hand warmers, you can get chemical hand warmers, and they're a great option. They're kind of a one-use deal. It works through oxidation, and it's a little packet of iron pyrite actually. You expose it to oxygen, shake it up, and it oxidizes. It puts out a lot of heat for about 4 hours. And they're great. They run maybe $1.50 each. So it's a good investment. Buy a bunch of them. Right now you can get big cases of them to use them up. Here's another option. Now they're making electric hand warmers. And this one is on high, and it's really hot, so be a little careful. You plug it in with a USB cord, charged up, it's rechargeable. It'll run about 5 hours. It's set on the highest, and you'll see it's pretty darn warm. It should have a little felt case because it's a little too warm for me. Use it during the day, and take it. Ooh, that's nice. Take it home, recharge it, and you're ready for the next time. They run 18 to 25 bucks. And so they're a really nice option. Yeah, they put out a lot of heat, don't they? They're impressive. So they do make some nice little options. The other things I use a lot of, and I mentioned that I go pretty minimal. I use magic glove type gloves a lot. They're little polypropylene gloves. These ones have grippy dots that let me hold onto rods and that a little better. They stretch onto my hand, and but you get magic gloves, and these things are pretty cheap. These ones are probably $5. These are about $3 a piece. I carry a lot of them because inevitably I drop them on the ice in the water, or I grab a fish without thinking about it. Pretty soon they're all slimy and gooey, and I just throw these in the washing machine and clean them up, send them around, and I'm good to go again. I can get by a lot of times with just magic gloves. It's just a little bit of cover on my hands, but you have a pair of those inside a pair of mittens. They're going to be nice and toasty. You have a pair of those inside your muff, and it's going to be nice and toasty. When you get that bite, you're good to go. So the other thing is I use two things, and we're about done. I use lots of foam pads. Again, the coldest thing is on the ice, and you stand on one of these, make sure they're closed cell foam, or you can sit on it, because if I'm sitting on something, I've squashed up all of the clothing I've got, and so just a few contact points. This will do you good, and then I carry tons of rags, and as I'm handling fish, hopefully you're catching fish, wiping the hands off. I always drop these on the ice, and they're wet, so I carry a lot of them. You can see these have a little bit of use to them. Pretty grimy, but I wash them up. Lastly, thing I'd mentioned, ice fishing gear is a nice investment. I finally started doing it. These are a little heavier because these are float. Both of these will float. But as you get, bibs are really nice because they come all the way up to here. They eliminate the drafts back there. If you get some kind of bibs, if you can, get something that has a zip to the hip. So a lot of bibs will only zip up about that far. And in order to use those, you're probably going to have to take your boots off. And if you're going to take your boots off, chances are you're going to do it in the parking lot because you didn't think about it at home, and you're going to be hopping around sort of. Standing on a foam pad is nice. Try not to get your feet all snowy and cold. But if you do a zip to the hip, you can pull these on and off really easily. One of the things I mentioned is if you get wet, then you're going to get cold. And most people, you get to the parking lot and it's really cold, and you go, ooh, and you put on everything you have, and then you hike half a mile out, and by the time you get out there, you're sweating. Well, that's a problem, because that sweat, as it starts to dry, is going to cool you down. So even though it kind of goes against your reason, dress really light for the walk out. I take off most of my layers, put them in the sled, walk out. Hopefully I'm nice and warm, but I'm not sweaty. And then as soon as I get out there, I start putting layers on. So try not to get hot and sweaty, and that'll make a big difference. The one last thing I'll mention, so you guys can close your ears on this one. Unfortunately, for the ladies, nothing worse than you walk out a half mile of that really good fishing spot, and that morning coffee kicks in. And so walking half a mile back to shore is just like, oh man, I don't want to do that. It's not much fun burying it all out there on the ice. But there are some things you can do. One, there is a little deal called a tinkle bell. And these are actually made by a couple women here in town. They let you pee without taking all your clothes off and while you're standing up. They recommend practicing it in the shower before you actually go out and try it, so you don't have a big accident. So it's an option, but the one I actually do, it's called a luggable loo, and it'll work for anybody that's out there. And it's a toilet seat that snaps on top of a 5-gallon bucket. And so I take a really heavy garbage bag, put it in the 5-gallon bucket. I put in kitty litter, snap that thing on, I can pack it out there. And if somebody needs to use the facilities and they don't wanna walk all the way to shore, you just clear out an ice shack, put them in there, they can do the thing, and then at the end of the day, you just take the bag out, throw it in the garbage. So Luggabaloo's are about $20. They're a nice thing to keep everybody coming. And I use them in the summertime with the boat too, so. And that's about it. Any questions? Yes?
What is a raffle?
We can do the raffle now. So, and where did my ice picks end up?
Oh, I have them here.
Okay. So that's one of the things I'm going to give away. And unfortunately, the guys before me were a little bit generous, and there's not a lot left here. So I got a big enough crew. If you folks want to sit for a minute, I've got a bag and a couple hats and this. I will go talk to those guys and see if I can get a few more goodies to give to you, because you've been really good about it and sat through my blurb. Yes?
Do you just keep on with these and put them
Yep, no, we've already got the deal in there, and we'll see if I can. So if you want me to go see if I can rustle up a few more gifts, because this is a great crew. That's more than I expected.